Hello and welcome to Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL. My name is Justin McMenemy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, we discuss the principles of organizational physics as well as office gun safety. For those of you wondering, a desk pop is not a real thing. Welcome to the sixth and maybe, just maybe, final installment of my survey of Kelly Johnson's 14 Rules of Management, employed by Skunk Works in the 1950s and maintained over the last 7 decades. My passion for this list stems from its aim to define the cultural and practical norms of an organization unlike most. Skunk Works is chartered to profitably develop products and technology 1 or 2 generations ahead of the competition. Those that study innovative organizations are surely familiar with the likes of Bell Labs, Xerox PARC, or any number of academic institutions in which highly talented individuals are endowed budgets to push the technological horizon. At the other end of the continuum are most blue-chip companies, governed tightly by the pursuit of financial returns and shareholder value. These companies, in abundance of caution, find themselves most comfortable in the fast follower position. Skunk Works is a hybrid. They seek to produce eye-popping technical advancements while still constrained by budget, timeline, performance metrics, competitors, and free market realities. Like the products developed by Skunk Works, the organization is built for speed. In pursuit of speed, Kelly Johnson sought to peel away all unnecessary and wasteful activities. The bureaucracy, the busy work, the politics so commonly associated with large companies. For a decade, I was blessed with the opportunity to sit in roles like Kelly Johnson. Though the industry and scale were different, Precision Planting, like Skunk Works, was an organization set apart from broader corporate strategy, corporate processes, market approach, and business model. Our mission was to be the fast horse division, an organization chartered to run out in front of the status quo, exploring technologies, products, and market approaches which sought to move the customer and the industry forward. Like Skunk Works, we were not a research organization. We were measured by profitability, we had competitors, timelines, and budgets. As such, I found comfort and confidence by emulating many aspects of Precision Planting after the organizational work laid out by Kelly Johnson. These episodes are a survey of my experiences building an organization in the spirit of Skunk Works. At any given moment in your home right now, the molecule H2O simultaneously exists in 3 very different conditions. Within the air, water exists as vapor. Entirely unseen, water vapor is only felt when in abundance or absence, either in the sticky heat of summer or the dry air of winter. Across daily life, we interact regularly with water in liquid form, used for hydrating, cleaning, cooking, bathing, and watering. And finally, within the freezer, ice. The point of this simple analogy is that the exact same molecule exists in 3 distinct forms within close proximity. Why? Because their environments are different. A given molecule of water doesn't decide what form it will inhabit. Rather, it responds to the environment, the temperature and pressure around it. I am convinced a well-balanced company must simultaneously operate in multiple phases. A portion of the company seeking growth and profitability through fluidity, able to explore and pursue emerging opportunities, and an effort to develop future growth engines. Simultaneously, a company must contain rigid, structured, formed aspects of the business able to retain shape and advance present pursuits. All of this is well and good in the theoretical, but for so many this breaks down in the practical. The only means by which multiple organizational phases can simultaneously exist within a company is to maintain multiple environments. Kelly Johnson's rules of management are a proven set of environmental instructions for a leader hoping to maintain fluidity within a broader, rigid organization. The 11th rule of management states, program funding must be timely so that the contractor doesn't have to keep running to the bank to support government projects. Kelly Johnson is seeking stability for the organization. Most Skunk Works projects were funded through the U.S. defense budget. Delayed payments risk disruption to development momentum, causing Johnson to seek private funding to bridge the delay. An organization can be characterized by its momentum. In physics, momentum is the combination of the size and speed of an object in a given direction. Let's think of a pair of cars. An SUV traveling slowly through a subdivision and a Honda Civic speeding down the interstate have the same momentum in the direction they travel. The SUV gets its momentum mostly from size, while the Civic gets its momentum mostly from speed. For our analogy, it is also important to point out that neither vehicle has any momentum to the left or to the right of their current path. Momentum is in a set direction. If we then apply the momentum principle to the organization, we too are interested in speed, size, and direction. Most every manager at some point is tasked with increasing organizational momentum. In order to do so, the manager can increase either the size or speed of the organization while minimizing changes in direction. Most often, leadership pursues increased employment as a means of increasing momentum. However, in physics and in organizations, larger bodies tend to move slower, therefore giving up most, if not all, of the desired momentum gains. At Precision Planting, we took a somewhat unique approach in increasing organizational momentum. First, we sought to limit direction changes to an absolute minimum. Second, we rigorously focused on maintaining and even increasing speed of ideas, speed of decisions, and speed of prototyping. And finally, we added size only with great care. The trickle-down effect led us to a unique approach in regard to product development budgets and staffing when compared to most large companies and many startups. Increasingly, both tech companies and wannabe tech companies tout percent of revenue spent on product development. While targets range widely by industry and business stage, it is not uncommon for growth-focused tech businesses to target between 12 and 18% of sales to be spent in engineering. On the surface, there does not seem to be any issue with this target, and most engineering managers salivate at the thought of a budget that size. The issue arises in the arena of sales forecasting. In my experience, sales projections are both smooth and ever increasing. However, sales history reports are jagged. By tying engineering spend to a jagged or even cyclical sales number, one can greatly impact organizational momentum. Boom and bust hiring and firing, along with the resulting priority recalculations, are the organizational equivalent of a 5-year-old behind the wheel of a go-kart. A 5-year-old believes that driving is an active event. Therefore, they are constantly turning the wheel and smashing on the pedals. In order to mitigate the market's impact on organizational momentum, I sought to underspend and understaff the R&D allocation each year when compared to the percent of sales metric. This provided downside protection against a sales miss. I valued organizational stability over max capacity. Momentum is most efficiently attained and maintained when changes are measured as opposed to reactionary. In practice, we sought to avoid the disruption of large hiring waves in growth years and austerity or even headcount reduction in years of low or no growth. Moderated headcount growth served us in two ways. First, we were able to minimize the chaos of rushing to hire large swaths of people. And second, by hiring consistently across the market cycle, we were buyers in the talent market while others were sellers. We found that we were able to increase staff by about 10% per year without significantly altering the organizational culture while steadily increasing the volume coming through the product pipeline. This budget growth of about 10% was in context of annualized sales growth closer to 18% for our company. The question arises, how did the engineering team keep up with the growth of the business if we were only growing at 10% and the business was growing at 18%? The answer is that we use the steering wheel and the brake extremely sparingly. We were able to maintain speed as we grew because we weren't changing directions regularly or stopping and starting every few years. Our momentum calculus was to maintain direction and carefully increase size while being vigilant to maintain speed. I must offer a word to the wise. A leader that desires to take this approach must establish a documented means of accruing credit for frugal spending during boom years, to then later use that credit during lean years. Too often, when times get tough, budget cuts are handed down in a peanut butter fashion across every department. I understand the logic. From the boardroom, it stands to reason that everyone should pony up and share in the pain. However, there must be a hedge in place to reward prior frugality. Otherwise, this strategy will backfire. Honestly, that is probably why most department heads hire all the people they can get their hands on. It gives them more to offer to the gods when it comes time to sacrifice at the altar of shareholder value. The 12th rule of management states there must be mutual trust between the buyer and the provider. Very close cooperation reduces misunderstanding and correspondence to an absolute minimum. This rule centers on the importance of trust. And not merely trust amongst teammates within an organization, but trust all along the value chain. Trust can succinctly be defined as the firm belief in the reliability of someone. During my decade, entombed in a bureaucratic corporate pyramid, interdepartmental fighting, backstabbing, and gossip were far more prevalent than any measure of trust. I honestly cannot imagine what would have happened if a staff engineer said in a design review, "I trust the other team to do their work." Interdepartmental trust, in fact, was so low that several groups hired managers who were given the role of tracking and creating visibility into the underperformance of other departments. One may ask, how does an organization devolve to such a point? In the final years of a metrics-driven organization, improvements are no longer easily attained. How many 5% cost reductions can a given part undergo before there is no fruit left on the tree? These same geriatric organizations are also fond of the word accountability, which often translates to blame must be assigned. This world of impossible to attain metrics, coupled with punitive action for failure to meet a goal, ensures a corporate culture of blame shifting, conspiring, and manipulation. In the worst instances, employees are pressed into outright dishonesty in pursuit of achieving an objective. Examples like the 2020 Wells Fargo fake customer account scandal, or the 2017 scandal in which employees of Progress Rail, a subsidiary of Caterpillar, dumped train parts into the Pacific Ocean as part of a scam to charge customers for parts they didn't need. I think it's safe to say a company culture which produces metrics-driven dishonesty lacks trust. As a young engineer within a hit the metrics or else culture, I was volunteered to assist a neighboring group within our division on a computational analysis project. The goal of the exercise was to determine the likelihood a proposed design change would significantly reduce a failure mode being experienced by customers in the field. An important note, and one I only later was informed of, this field issue was a hot-button topic, and I had been pulled in because an ultimatum had been laid down by leadership: fix it or else. Now, I don't say that to indicate that I was some crack shot at solving these types of problems, but rather to say they were throwing warm bodies at the problem due to imposed urgency. Under the tutelage of the tech steward, I embarked on setting up the model and running several simulations. After a few weeks, I completed the analysis and was thanked for my efforts. Unfortunately for the customer, the findings of my investigation indicated the design change would have little or no effect on resolving the quality issues. In conversations with the tech steward, he agreed with the findings. A colleague later shared with me that my analysis had been presented in an executive review meeting. While I had been credited for my efforts, the analysis results had been manipulated to indicate that the design change would significantly improve the field issue. As you may expect, I had not been invited to present my findings. I can only guess because my true findings presented an inconvenient truth. I was furious, as this was tantamount to fraud, presented in my absence under my name. In my frustration, I went to the tech steward seeking an explanation. I was informed that because of leadership's ultimatum, there was no room politically for my original results, because someone's head would roll if there wasn't a solution to the problem right now. Therefore, presenting and implementing a phantom solution would buy the design team time to find and actually fix the problem. About that time, I began looking at the activities of the organization through a similar lens as Kelly Johnson as he pens the 12th rule. What is the effectiveness of an activity at delivering a product to the market versus the time spent posturing, protecting, blaming, or surveilling one another? These are byproducts of an organization riddled with dishonesty and distrust. Through this lens, it was clear that a significant amount of effort was spent seeking protection from accusation or attack or preparing an accusation or attack on someone else. If we use for a moment a warfare analogy, most of the ammunition and fighting capacity of the army was being spent down trench, rather than being aimed downfield toward a profitable outcome of improving the livelihood of the customer. One of the most important roles of leadership is to speak and act in a way that keeps the guns pointed downfield, to keep the main problem the main problem. If a leader does not actively suppress personal agendas, political infighting, professional jockeying, and grudge holding, it is only a matter of time before most of the organization's energy will be internally expended, leaving little energy to move the org towards the mission. As we discussed in the previous episode, leadership must neither in public or private convey that others in the organization have an easier role, aren't pulling their weight, or aren't smart enough to do their job. We call these behaviors the presumption of ease and the presumption of guilt. The watershed effects of grumbling leaders are astounding. A few years after my analysis results were manipulated, within that same organization, I found myself in a meeting with a brand new engineer from another internal business unit. In the meeting, he expressed exasperation that my group, quote, never has their crap together. This is a person that walked across the college graduation stage 6 months ago, and in a few short months had learned the culture of distrust to such an extent that he is mouthing off in a meeting to engineers with 8 to 10 years more experience than him. As Marty McFly's future in-laws say in Back to the Future, he's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too. This behavior can often become so entrenched in a corporate culture that it becomes hard to see. I offer a potential peephole into a given corporate culture. Listen to how pronouns are used. Who is we when a leader speaks? And who is they? If they is someone else in the company, you have to nip that in the bud. The 13th rule of management states, access by outsiders to the project and its personnel must be strictly controlled by appropriate security measures. Within the context of Skunk Works, this rule is largely driven by the confidentiality requirements of the projects undertaken. Many of the projects are funded through the military and are directly related to national defense. The question to be considered for those desiring to lead a fast-paced, nimble, liquid, counterculture organization inside of an established, rigid company is, does this rule apply for projects and markets which are not entangled with national security? I believe the answer is yes. Remember from the opening, the goal of an organization cast in the mold of Skunk Works is to be different than the rest of the organization. The only means by which one company can have two distinct phases of business simultaneously is to allow two distinct environments. The means of maintaining two distinct environments is to limit interaction and cross-pollination. Otherwise, the older, larger, and more rigid will overpower the younger, smaller, and more fluid. Most established companies are anchored to processes and process adherence and are therefore staffed by employees that love processes and process adherence. Otherwise stated, most big companies devolve into elementary school. In that, the entire day is governed by a narrow set of behavioral and procedural rules and norms. And like in elementary school, a large subset of students find no greater pleasure than drawing the attention of leadership to those that do not follow the rules. In a modern organization, however, we put high-minded terms to what in elementary school is simply called tattling. We use terms like strategic alignment, risk mitigation, seamless experience, synergy, and process uniformity. Skunk Works, as we've said, is an organization set apart, typically targeting a different market segment with a different customer approach and a unique profit model. In order to hit a different target than the rest of the company, one needs to be given leeway to avoid and even ignore many of the broader corporate norms. A critical component of doing this is to strictly control access to the organization from those across the broader company. Rule 13 is in many ways undergirded by rule number 1. The organization has to report to the highest person possible. And rule number 3, maintaining a viciously small team. However, I believe this rule extends the charter of the organization that it should not be under the prying eyes of every captain of synergy across the company. In my experience, the departments which present the greatest risk to this rule are the support functions: HR, Comp and Ben, IT, legal, safety, and purchasing. It seems rational and even logical to allow uniqueness to the semi-autonomous division in things like product and brand and sales approach. But surely there are synergies within the service organizations, right? Can't we have a single salary banding policy? Can't we have a single IT team to manage the mundane things like issuing laptops and software approvals? Come on, can't the same person buy toilet paper across both groups? The answer is no. The rationale for my belief falls into 2 categories. First is speed. The semi-autonomous organization must be fast in its pursuits of success. Go back to the previous momentum discussion if you have questions. Therefore, all policies, procedures, and decisions must be made quickly and without recurring meetings or broader strategic alignment. The second is risk tolerance. The semi-autonomous organization operates closer to the edge, takes more risks. In order to successfully maintain speed and risk tolerance in the marketplace, the whole of the unit must be geared to run the same speed. Even the support functions, even buying toilet paper. So where then is the connection between the semi-autonomous organization and the rest of the company? How does the CEO get any degree of confidence that there are not 2 engineers working on the same technical problem without knowledge of one another? How does the CEO sleep at night with the confidence that 2 salespeople are not unknowingly targeting the exact same customer in the exact same way in the marketplace? A critical role of leadership within the semi-autonomous organization is to provide enough communication with the mothership to ensure project teams do not knowingly overlap, and no more. The executive that launches and supports a semi-autonomous unit like Skunk Works, they do it for reasons of innovation, speed, a diverse market approach, and a complementary profit engine. It is counterproductive to expect to attain those things and deep collaboration at the same time. The gears of the 2 organizations are running at very different speeds. Without an idler gear, Either the gears will grind or the faster will slow to match the pace of the larger. Undeniably, leadership at Lockheed faced great temptation to pull Skunk Works into the full matrix of status, coordination, and collaboration meetings across Greater Lockheed. And it stands to reason. They are both designing planes. Can't the wiring harness engineer from Skunk Works and the wiring harness engineer from Lockheed share best practices? Shouldn't we be looking to add technologies in development at Skunk Works onto the Lockheed product roadmaps? Fight against this temptation. This will not work. This pairing is equivalent to placing a wild tiger fresh out of the jungle in a cage with a lifelong zoo tiger. Yes, they are both tigers, but no, it will not work. I repeat, there should be minimal point-to-point communication in and out of the semi-autonomous organization. Enough information should flow to prevent friendly fire or significant wasted effort, but we are not trying to place them into joint operations. The 14th rule of management states, because only a few people will be used in engineering and most other areas, a means of rewarding good performance by pay must be provided, not based on the number of personnel supervised. Within modern corporations, the most reliable method at an employee's disposal to increase their salary is to move into people management. Now, companies will talk about technical tracks and leadership tracks, but in general, there are more and higher paying positions available to employees that join the leadership class. This phenomenon spawns several staffing dynamics common in most large organizations. First, employees with demonstrated technical proficiency and passion face a dilemma. Either remain in the lower salary grades by continuing as a technical contributor or lay down the craft in pursuit of promotion. The reason for calling this a dilemma is that most managerial roles in large organizations afford a surprisingly small amount of time for continued practice or even mentorship of a technical discipline. Managers' calendars are routinely packed with recurring staff meetings, budget meetings, and alignment meetings. Secondly, preferential financial treatment of the management class acts to dilute the passion of leadership as a group for learning and honing the disciplines of people leadership and inspiration. Bluntly said, I'm pretty sure many of my managers early in my career were there for the money, not because they dreamed of someday motivating, mentoring, or supporting others. By largely capping what an individual can make while in full-time service to a technical craft, the organization runs the risk of transitioning an excellent technical contributor into a mediocre, disinterested, and dissatisfied manager. In accord with Kelly Johnson's 14th rule, at Precision Planting, we placed a high priority on moving people into leadership who desired to learn and excel at the craft. One of the means that we used to ensure that only those that wanted to lead moved into leadership was that we did not place a premium value on leadership over and above other skills. Now, at first blush, that may seem counterintuitive, but by doing this, employees that moved into leadership did so because they wanted to learn the craft of leading and inspiring others, not because it was the only way that they could get a raise. Another mechanism we put in place was that first-line leaders were not burdened with 25 to 30 hours of recurring meetings focused on budgets, alignment, and communication. Rather, new leaders continued in large part to spend a significant portion of their time practicing their craft. This acted to both enable leaders to be more deeply integrated into the projects and teams that they were leading, as well as mitigated the perception of a binary decision between leadership and technical work. In practice, the above approaches were implemented such that new people leaders generally did not receive a monetary increase for the move which placed them into leadership. As they typically were moving into a leadership role of the team and project they were currently working on, we would seek to slightly decrease their individual responsibilities on the project while adding a few employees into their care. These practices helped ensure that the leaders in the org absolutely wanted to learn the skill, and that the people that had no interest in leading others never asked to and were never penalized for their lack of interest. For reference, of the 10 most highly compensated employees within the organization, regularly half of them were individual contributors. I was never concerned with this ratio, as highly compensated technical employees were easily replacing the need for 3 or 4 other employees through their technical prowess, attitude, and throughput. Ben Rich says in the book Skunk Works, "We became the most successful advanced projects company in the world by hiring talented people, paying them top dollar, and motivating them into believing that they could produce a Mach 3 airplane like the Blackbird a generation or two ahead of anybody else." Paying top dollar for top talent is table stakes for running an organization like Skunk Works. Therefore, being tied to a broader corporate compensation practice or policy must be avoided at all costs. If this environmental uniqueness is unable to be maintained, it is only a matter of time before talent leaves, momentum slows, and water freezes to ice. That concludes the 14 Rules of Management written by Kelly Johnson. Or does it? In the book Skunk Works, Ben Rich references the existence of a 15th unwritten rule, which has been transmitted verbally through the generations. That being said, there will be a bonus 7th episode dedicated to Kelly Johnson's 15th unwritten rule of management. I hope you will join us next time for what will be, I promise you, the final episode in this series. For those that wish to share comments, praises, or large sums of money, you can reach me at justin@grody.io. For those that are sick and tired of this series, but for some reason haven't turned it off yet, go ahead and show your frustration by slamming the dislike button twice on your podcast player. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again soon.